wesn.
My parents' generation grew up with Royal Castle from the first restaurant in 1968 when that distinctive, tempting aroma hit the air. Like never before, fried chicken with a special blend of local seasonings and a one-of-a-kind flavor down to the bone. Today, Royal Castle still have that same delicious taste and I love it too. And the kids, they have more to enjoy. For me, the Castle is more than just nice food. It's we own, part of me and you, and is the real flavor of TNT.
wesn.
There are times when I fully don't understand how certain things happen. That said, of course, usually we never get 100% of the information when speaking about something of public interest. In this case, there was an accident where I believe it was 4 people in the vehicle were killed. Doesn't seem as though there was anyone else involved in the accident. At least reading through 2 of the stories. Not only did 3 adults die, but a 6-year-old child, 2 of the adults were her parents, was killed in the accident. As one person was quoted in the media saying, "This nice family just gone." Now, Saturday night, 11:30, there was a police response to a traffic crash, southbound lane on the Solomon Rocha Highway, near Claxton Bay flyover. The driver lost control of the vehicle. The father, it went careening into the median, overturned several times. I'm not entirely sure. It could have been a bad drive. But then, how fast were they going that it caused such a severe accident? Now, I'm not a crash expert, so I don't know how fast you would have to go in order to cause your vehicle to flip when you careen off into the median, which, given that it's lower elevation, it's a slope, it might not take as much to flip a car. I've seen a car flipped, the aftermath of a car flipping on the Digger Martin Highway with no discernible means for it to flip, given the fact that there's no slope to allow the vehicle to get the angle of attack beyond its center of gravity, its tipping point, its balance point. In this case, it might not have taken that much for it to flip, but for the accident to be so severe that everybody died. While we don't know for sure, and I can't say for sure, I have to ask the question, exactly how fast was this father driving with his 6-year-old and his wife in the car? The TTPS would already say, look, even if you're by yourself, that doesn't mean that somehow it's safer. And I understand it's a highway. Now, maybe it was not he was driving recklessly. Maybe the speed just got away from him. When you're on the highway and it's clear, it doesn't take much. Eventually, the car will accelerate beyond 100 if you're not careful. It doesn't take much pressure on the gas. In fact, that's at times like a hard balancing act. You could have the lightest foot, give a vehicle enough time, it will accelerate. It just won't accelerate fast, but it'll get the top speed. So I don't know what it is. Maybe there was a bad drive. Maybe he fell asleep at the wheel and his foot mashed the gas. You know, who knows? Maybe there was a medical emergency. I don't know. But these are just one of the things where I can't help but ask the questions. And hopefully we'll find the answers. Regardless, on face value, I guess you could say this is just, take this as a warning. You know, I don't want to necessarily condemn the gentleman. You know, he paid the ultimate price, he and his family, and a passenger. But it's one of those things where this situation is causing people to say, this is why we need the demerit points. I will hazard a guess that even if we had the demerit points, this accident could have easily happened. After 8 p.m. on a Saturday night, southbound, close to midnight potentially, I've seen many people speed way too fast on the highway when I was going back up to Port of Spain from San Fernando in the night. You need to tell me how demerit points are going to automatically stop all this behavior. Because, and this is where I get frustrated when people bring up demerit points, when people bring up death penalty. Those are the consequences for people that get caught. They have to get caught first. And I don't know if you noticed this or not, but we have a deficit when it comes to actually holding people accountable in this country. So it doesn't matter what prescribed penalty we have on the books. But right now, when it comes to low-level stuff, yeah, demerit point system, left, right, and center, slapping people across the mouth for minor violations that have nothing to do with road safety and preservation of life. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what happened in this accident. But let's assume that he was speeding. We don't know, does he speed all the time? Did he speed only tonight? Or what other circumstance caused this to potentially be a unique situation where, well, at this point, demerit points won't matter. But tell me, how much speeding? Those who drive on the highway, particularly at night, when of course it's clearer, do you notice the demerit points? Does it make you feel safer on the highway? Because it didn't make me notice one difference, to be honest. 10 years ago, driving northbound from Shogunas felt the same as this last year driving northbound on the same highway. And then driving eastbound, once you get to the overpass, felt the same way, the same reckless speeding. So, meanwhile, the Prime Minister is looking to order the nation roads with regards to road repair. I just would like, while you're doing the exercise, potentially see how easy it would be to also look at the road networks and try, if you're going to send people out there to check things, hopefully you're not just checking paperwork, but if you're going to send people out there to check things, see if you could be more comprehensive and consider what is the actual state of roads so you could determine what the actual transportation network of our road systems are, so you could try and figure out how efficient it is, how capable it is, how deficient it is, and what roads to add. Not what lanes to add on existing roads, but what roads to improve so that connectivity could be improved. Similar to the highway going south, to the DB Highway. But there's a whole eastern half of the island that I feel doesn't really get much consideration. And then people end up having to drive northwest for everything. And then we wonder, oh gosh, why are we all stuck in a corner? Well, that's why. We'll have to, but I applaud the effort though at the end of the day, because this accident, maybe there was an issue with the road. Who knows? A couple of things on some other unfortunate incidents. There was a domestic violence situation where a gentleman, 55-year-old, he had an argument with his wife, thought that she was cheating on him. It turned violent. The son tried to intervene. Eventually, the wife and the son got out of the house, but the husband perished in a fire. Apparently, his body was charred, was found burnt on the bed frame. So it was assumed currently to be suicide. Potentially, he intentionally started the fire and did not attempt to save himself and was taken by the flames. Or maybe he killed himself and the fallout caused the fire. Who knows? Regardless, this is one of those things where the police is urging the public to report signs of domestic violence. And I understand why, yes, but this is not, ironically, this is not a murder-suicide situation. So to me, this situation is less about domestic violence, because at the end, the only person that the perpetrator allegedly killed was himself. This is more about a situation where a gentleman was so devastated by, I have nothing to substantiate it, so I have to say accusations of infidelity, that he took extreme action. Whether it was domestic violence, because apparently he was brandishing a cutlass, or he attacked his wife with a cutlass, or killing himself. We don't know to what extent was he violent outside. I don't know, right? I didn't see anything to report that necessarily spoke about that. So the community is in shock. They're saying we need serious intervention. Victims must have access to safe spaces, mental health support, fast police response. I get that, but to me, this is more of an example of what went wrong with this gentleman's mentality, that he went so far. Because notice, he did not continue with his violence against his family members. But he was so upset, he killed himself. Why did it escalate to that point from an argument, seemingly? At the end of the day, infidelity happens more often than we probably would want to admit. So what happens when it causes someone to go violent? Was he always a violent person? I don't know. I don't know him. Was the community shocked because they never saw signs about it? Maybe if we had a better grasp of our national mental health situation, stories like this would be reduced. And then by extension, some, not all, domestic violence situations might not happen. I wouldn't say that for all, but maybe some will. Because maybe some of it is because family members don't have a proper handle on their emotional balance. And then there was another incident where an off-duty police officer shot an elderly gentleman in Tobago, who his family saying he was having mental problems, memory problems, aging. And the off-duty officer is reported to have feared for his life because a 74-year-old confused elderly person is going to always look threatening. Which, that is a bit sarcastic. It's not impossible. But the flip side is, again, was he brandishing a weapon? I don't I don't know, this was 5 a.m. in the morning. And the off-duty officer said that he was trying to break into his home. There's a part of me that thinks that yes, the shooting could potentially be justified. We don't know what the elderly gentleman did or didn't do, but there's also a part of me that thinks, hold up, it's one thing if you yourself are someone of similar age, similar vulnerabilities, and you fear for your life. If this is an off-duty officer potentially having bad judgment in a situation like this, what extent, how confident are we supposed to be with regards to his ability to actually go out there and confront criminals if an old person outside his door is going to scare him that much to shoot him 3 times? Now, one of the things in this, I don't agree with it. But to some extent, I find this, I don't even know what to say with regards to this, but apparently someone attempted to commit arson on the house of the off-duty police officer. So a family member is calling, just give it a few days, let the authorities investigate the matter, don't rush for judgment. And there's something about this scenario where I wouldn't necessarily blame the deceased family for saying, gee, I wish maybe this off-duty officer could have also potentially exercised some restraint and not just go 0 to 100, seemingly off the bat. And there's a little bit of unfairness now. Not that I say that they're wrong for this, right? It just doesn't seem fair. It's not wrong, just unfair. Please don't rush to judge someone who rushed to judge a situation potentially that ended up with an elderly gentleman losing his life. I get it. I don't agree with any attempt to harm the off-duty officer on a personal level. That's vigilante justice. That will serve no one or society well. No one individual, including the deceased and his family members. But what you're asking for them to do is to basically be the bigger person when in a very rules for thee, not for me. Different standards for different people. And this is what happens. When you, and let me just close with this. This is a warning. We might think, oh, we're justified, we're protecting our property, whatever. Right. This is a potential outcome to aggressive stand your ground laws. You get an elderly person who might be confused on where they are, or someone with a mental deficiency who's not elderly. And this is essentially the bad outcome, one of many different ways that it could happen. And even if you have stand your ground laws, to some extent, this also sheds light on potential consequences, not necessarily legal ones. You commit violence against someone, depending on the situation, even if they're criminals now. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not quick to say I want a gun to defend myself. Because I know, all right, maybe you win the first gunfight, but what happens when they take it personally if it's criminals? Because if seemingly, potentially, we don't know who the potential arsonist was, but let's just say it was a family member, they might not have nothing to do with crime. They just felt aggrieved. What about criminals who will take it as an insult? You want to commit violence against us? No, we had to prove that we big and badder so that the people will fear us. We will put you in the ground. I don't know. Are we ready for that? I don't know. More on that in a bit. First, let me just check and see. I think we have a comment here. So let's just take the comment now. As it was about the road safety situation, because not necessarily going to go back to this little issue. There are dangerous spots on our roads. At Akono in Maracas, St. Joseph, a car literally fell off the road into a drain. These new LED headlights can blind and on incoming drivers. Yeah, that could be it. Maybe he was blinded. Maybe he slipped off the road. He might not have necessarily been going that fast. But again, this begs the question of, to what extent now should you be driving fast and potentially you assume you could handle it until something unexpected happens. One of the good things about 3 lanes is that, to me, it's a little bit safer on the middle lane. One of the issues I have with the dual lane highways, or just with highways in general, is that outside lane, even if you just want to cruise in, there are times when there's a lot more issues on the road in that outside lane, whether it's 3 lanes or 2 lanes, at numerous parts on the highway. Always, like, if there's any roughness, rough patches, potholes, sinks, whatever. And even if you're driving at 80, you don't necessarily want to be constantly going into rough patches on your tires, right? So, and then of course, yes, high beams on the highway. That's a whole other kettle of fish. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll go further into the stand your ground conversation and the proposal. We only told a potential model, but we could chew into that when we get back. Sean Michael Small, this is Talking One on WESN. We'll be right back after this.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world: diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and now we're going to our daily review. One of the big stories coming out of the post-cabinet press briefing last week, or the press conference last week, is the talk about the Stand Your Ground legislation. The AG said after the mid-year budget review, that's basically when it's carded on their agenda. And one of the things they mentioned was essentially they're looking at various models around the world, one of them being Florida, which might just be one of the models that certain stakeholders and commentators and citizens did not want to see under consideration. Now, to what extent is this politics, right? Because how much do we want to align ourselves politically, internationally with the current American administration, which is Republican, and Florida is a Republican state, and the stand your ground laws were done, I believe, by a Republican governor. So, yeah. Or state legislature. Now, Prime Minister, one of the things with regards to the Prime Minister is that to what extent do we take what she says on this matter literally? And I would argue that technically we should not take her literally everything she says, because when she says load up the Matic or empty the Matic or whatever, obviously she's not saying that the government will start to authorize FULs for automatic weapons for private citizens, right? So she's not making the distinction semi-automatic. I will make the distinction for her. You could empty a semi-automatic, sure, fine. But at the end of the day, the gun talk coming from the Prime Minister, basically, we kind of know at some point, you know, it's for dramatic effect and not literal. Right? She's not hoping, you know, once this thing comes in effect that we have 500 cases where, you know, people just empty clips into bodies. Because we all saw what happened when you shoot someone 3 times when a police officer faced for his life being confronted by a 74-year-old man. Now, one of the things that they pointed out is, I understand, yes, to some extent this is necessary, but to what extent is this kind of conceding crime statistics? I get it. Police can't be on every street corner, can't be in front of every house. So with regards to home invasions, I have been a proponent with, you know, doing whatever you can to help yourself. But I feel as though the angle that the administration is taking is unintentionally implying, well, we really don't know how quick we could solve the things from the criminal justice side, so we'll help you help us by helping you help yourself. And this is one of those balancing act things, because there are various stakeholders who have concerns about this situation. Right? Now, the Prime Minister is saying, if you don't know what's a gun, you don't have to take it. But these kind of laws are not so simple, right? So let's just go with first former Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj. He is concerned about responsible implementation, right? The government has a responsibility to consider what means are available in order to protect the people and to ensure lawlessness is curtailed, right? We have to ensure that it's not abused and misused so that innocent people can also be killed under the guise of people defending themselves. He didn't necessarily say intentionally using it to commit murder, but he did mention people being killed under the guise of defending themselves. It's not necessarily a perfect example with what happened in Tobago, but it is one example. Now, let's go further. Let's say you have a personal disagreement with somebody, and you shoot him in your yard. Officer, he was rushing me. I feared for my life, so I shot him. Oops, he died. I feared for my life, so I shot him 3 times. We just had a police officer fear for his life, so it wasn't just one shot and go. And before anyone says anything, no, there is no such thing as shooting someone in the leg and wounding them. Handling a gun is not that easy, particularly a handgun. That's why, generally speaking, you aim for the torso. That's also why bulletproof vests are usually just limited to the torso, right? That's what you aim for, particularly with a pistol. But most people don't walk around with bulletproof vests. So you have a disagreement with someone, you fed up with them, you shoot them in your yard, you claim self-defense. Depending on the laws involved, and in fact, you could intentionally set this up. You could, if you know that someone is a hothead and he comes and confronts you, you could set up a situation to want him to come to confront you. You just wait for it. You have your gun behind your back, on your belt. He can't see it. He don't know he's being set up. All he needs to do is be aggressive enough. Maybe a neighbor would say, yes, I heard shouting. Sounded bad. He said he was going to kill him. You know, people use that phrase willy-nilly, irresponsibly. I'm going to kill you. You don't actually mean it, but you throw it out there like an idiot. Well, all of a sudden now we have to change our understanding of what is reasonable speech. Real fast, depending. One of the other stakeholders, Dr. Randy Cepas, our criminologist, he is concerned about informing the public, which is something that I have pointed out before. We seemingly have a very bad implementation or information distribution problem in TNT, not just public sector, but private sector as well, right? But last but not least, former Minister of National Security, who is an attorney at law and a former police officer, Marvin Gonzalez, he said, I cannot support the importation of laws from other countries that can have a detrimental effect on the social and cultural cohesion of our multicultural nation. This kind of law is proven to not be effective in countries that introduce it and in multicultural communities, right? One of the things he said is, it erodes trust in law enforcement authorities and judicial system and can cause irreversible harm to social stability of nations like TNT. Stick a pin in that. Now, one of the things that makes this whole situation a bit more stark, because again, it's the Florida model. So we've been speaking right now so far about utilizing, because what do you think? Stand your ground in your house, home invasions, that's what they're talking about. But the Florida model does not limit itself there. Florida stand your ground legislation, as reported, and from what I remember, so I do believe this is correct, a person who is not engaged in unlawful activity, someone who isn't doing anything criminal, and who is attacked in any place where they have a right to be, has no duty to retreat and can stand their ground and meet force with force. They have, this is in Florida, they do not have a duty to retreat. Certain states, they actually want to say, you don't have a right to defend yourself, you have to retreat. And in some cases, some extreme cases, they even say you have to retreat from your house. You can only use force if you can't escape, which to some extent I find crazy. I'm just going to abandon my house. But anyway, that's a problem for the left side of politics in the country. On the right side, in any place where they have a right to be, and they're not doing anything criminal, they have no duty to retreat and can stand their ground, meet force with force. Deadly force can be used if a person reasonably believes it is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to themselves or another, or to prevent imminent commission of a forcible felony. Now, just think about the example. They come to your house, you say, officer, he came to me and he attacked me, we have a conversation, and it got heated, and he was threatening my life, and I feared for my life, so I shot him 3 times in the chest. And the officer will understand, unlike most people, or using a pistol, shot him 3 times, that could happen, right? But depending on how far we go with the Florida model, it doesn't have to be at your home. You could do that in the middle of the street. And this is why Karen Esteshera said she really wants to see, before she comments, what the legislation is going to be. Because I do find certain aspects of Florida stand your ground laws to be a little bit ridiculous. And they open the door up to be abused. Now, maybe it works for Florida. We are not Florida. Just got a comment here. Let's take the comment. An action must be proportional to the perceived threat. In English law, will the man in the street think your action proportional or reasonable? Again, if someone says the words are going to kill you and he rushes at you, what people think as reasonable is a very subjective thing. And there will be the potential to abuse that. Anything to do with subjectivity. And then you're saying English law. I will argue that while born of English law, born from English common law, American law is still American law. Their gun laws are very different to English laws. So if we are looking at stand your ground legislation, born from a different sort of mentality when it comes to personal firearms. Now, granted, they said that this is one of the examples they'll be looking at. It's not guaranteed. But remember what Marvin Gazelle said about trust and confidence in police. We don't have time to get into it. Well, you know what? I want to go to the next story. I'll just brush on it quick and maybe expand on it more tomorrow. But the National Security Minister, there's a headline where he said, Homeland Security Minister, headline, Homeland Security Minister, body armor before body-worn cameras. And my issue is this: how come for some things the government is saying we'll find the money, but for things that in my opinion should be a priority? Because I'm not saying choose one over the other. I'm saying why not both? Why is it that the TTPS has to prioritize body armor versus body cameras? Because remember what I said about trust and confidence now? The police has a trust and confidence deficit. Newsday has a report on this, separate to the one on Minister Alexander, saying that his priority or the administration priorities or the police priorities is going to be body armor versus body cameras. They'll get the body armor first, they'll get the body cameras second, apparently, based on what he said, right? TTPS, there's a report in the Newsday a few days ago, talking about the trust and confidence in the police service, how it was at a pretty low point, right, 14%. Then Gary Griffith came in. For better or worse, you like him or hate him, right, trust and confidence rose to 59%. Then it plummeted to 8% after he was removed from office. I'm going to say it like that. Let's be real now. You don't go through all that dog and pony show to say, oh, well, his contract was up. Now, members, I believe, the inspector who's chairman of the Tunubuna Police Station Community Council, he pointed to the fact that body cameras are essential tools, right? Despite the fact that, and I do believe it is reasonable criticism why the footage is not revealed to the public. But let's just not forget about the footage being revealed to the public, which is a very important part of the transparency that body cameras afford. Whether they're revealed to the public during trial or before, right? But the point is, at some point, you reveal it to the public where it would be responsibly, so that the public will no longer be left to speculate. But apparently that is a concept beyond a lot of people. For investigative purposes, you're prioritizing body armor versus body cameras. Let's go back to the minister quick. All I'll say is this: I don't necessarily think he's a bad guy. I don't necessarily think that this is something that is totally egregious and I want to condemn him for it. But I believe he is making an error. He's making a tactical decision instead of a strategic one. You're worried about police officers being safe from bullets, so they need bulletproof vests. What about police officers not being safe from citizens who don't trust them anymore because there are still situations of potential fake police going around? And let's not forget now, we're going to arm the population, right? Who wants a gun gets a gun. And now what happens when a citizen reasonably, let's go back to the phrasing of the commenter. If there's a reasonable perceived threat out there by someone who, any reasonable thinking person might question the credentials, do we empty the matic then? And I would argue a tool to help people trust police and give them the benefit of the doubt would be body cameras, not bulletproof vests. Because when they see police with their body cameras, maybe they would think twice before considering, hey, I wonder if this is someone looking to invade my house under the guise of saying they're police. Because potentially last week showed there could be criminals with bulletproof vests. So that ain't an identifier. We know that uniforms ain't an identifier. I don't have enough time to go on further with this topic because our media ambassador should be here. So let's take a break and we'll continue the conversation. Maybe not on that topic, folks, but we'll continue the conversation. Stay tuned.
My parents' generation grew up with Royal Castle from the first restaurant in 1968 when that distinctive, tempting aroma hit the air. Like never before, fried chicken with a special blend of local seasonings and a one-of-a-kind flavor down to the bone. Today, Royal Castle still have that same delicious taste and I love it too. And the kids, they have more to enjoy. For me, the Castle is more than just nice food. It's we own, part of me and you. And is the real flavor of TNT.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience.
Give us a call at 235-5479
for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're back here with our media ambassador, acting ASP Christopher Roon. We're going to slightly switch gears because the TTPS, every now and then, they give us these, notices, this information on various issues or circumstances, and it seems as though the public likes to ignore it. And then look, we just this weekend had a fatal accident where a 6-year-old child, I mentioned it before, was one of 4 victims in that accident alone. And it speaks to road safety. Oh yeah, road safety, yeah, lip service, road safety. Even a police officer in the rain, right? But that is not an example to say, they're not doing it, so we don't have to do it too. That should be an example of we need to do it too. And going to have a similar topic this morning with regards to the end of the school year situation, right, where young people like to have a pressure release. And never in the history of humanity have young people looking to relieve themselves of pressure. Has that never been a recipe for something to go wrong, right? Nah, never seen it before. And to talk about that, amongst other things, yeah, Acting ASP, welcome.
Right, good day to you, Sean, to your staff and to members of your viewing audience. So the TPS, just, we just wanted to advise members of the public, especially parents, around this time. It's the end of term, it's the end of exams, especially with CXC, what do they call it now, CSEC? I'm in the same boat as you, buddy. Yeah, look, we're in June, right? It's exams, right? Because so on all levels, they're going to be exams, right? It's a twofold issue where we have children experiencing undue stress.
Yeah.
Well, due to undue stress because of exams. I mean, exams will always be stressful.
Yeah.
In any form or fashion. And what we want parents to take cognizance of is how they treat with their children at the end of the exams, or after the exams, or within the season of the exams.
But also to some extent, I would argue, based on what you told me, it's also that they need to be aware of how they treated the children, before the exams, to kind of be aware of now and going forward.
Build their self-confidence and their strategies and moving forward, how they would accomplish or how they would get over any issues following the exam. So you have cases where you're successful in exams, and there are cases where you're not successful in the exams. And then the outcome, the child doesn't know how to deal with it, and the outcome is very negative.
But I actually think you're jumping the gun on your own topic, because I want to start the lead up to the exams and the pressure that they're under. Right? So when you told that to me, like, I understood it immediately, right? Because in a lot of cases, that pressure would have been piling on, particularly for like CSEC, CXC, A-levels, whatever. That would have been piling on SCA. Well, I mean, we had SCA, but now it's, to some extent, you're right, the pressure relief time, right? That pressure would have been piling on. In some cases, not even just this year, but for years, right? And of course, now I don't think we have the results yet for SCA, right? We don't have the results. That's later.
I think that's August,
same thing, of course, for CSEC and the like. We're not going to get that till later, right? So but now all of those kids, they have an opportunity to kind of try to break free and let loose after being kind of put in this bottle of stress.
And of course, and what parents could do, the build-up, of course, is the time you take to strategize how you're going to deal with these issues, whether you're successful or not in the exams.
Right,
you understand? So you have to put things in place. You have to assure them what will occur after the exams, whether you're positively or negatively successful in the exam, of course, and how we're going to move forward. So it's all about moving forward.
But I would also argue that, there's stories about this all the time. When you restrict children, once they get a little taste of freedom, sometimes they don't know how to deal with it. And they kind of go, they run wild and rampant, right? And when you restrict them, because it's like, you have this exam coming up, and for at least 2 years, right? Maybe in Form 1, they ain't thinking about, the end of Form 5.
No.
But once you hit like Form 3, Form 4, all of a sudden now life just takes a different turn, right? And once you get that pressure relief valve, sometimes what should be, you kind of just open it up a little bit to relieve some of that pressure. In the minds of young people, if you spend too much time parenting your child saying exams, and not actually treating them as a holistic human being, once they get a little taste of freedom, they don't know how to deal with it, and bad things could happen.
Bad, negative things could happen. We don't want children doing those bad things. So,
like partying, drinking.
Well, that's the other part of it.
Controlled substances.
That's the other part of it.
Driving under the influence of whatever.
Yeah, because now at the end of the exam, you have graduation, you have prom, or whatever they call it now.
Right. Yeah.
And
we call it prom now.
I don't know.
We never. Anyway. Yes. Whatever.
And, they would go to parties. They would drink alcohol illegally too. And they would get involved in drugs and psychedelic drugs and whatnot. We've had information coming to us where there's actually psychedelic parties, drugs being offered. These are parties that are put together for minors, and where they would sell them psychedelic drugs. And we've had reason to act on that information before. So now you have this happening around this time, and then and then you have the unfortunate incidents or accidents and whatnot, and the loss of life. Like recently there was a parent came out in the media and she spoke about, she spoke to the journalists about how she felt now that there was an accident about 8 years ago in which 2 kids died. And up to now, she doesn't feel that she has gotten justice.
Yeah.
And she said no kind of counseling helps. And how she comes to terms with it sometimes, she gets involved with other parents or speak to other parents who have had the same tragic loss of life in their lives. And then speaking to them. So the days that she is down, she would speak to them. So even sometimes counseling doesn't work, and but as I said, the kids were out partying after exams and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, for the last couple of years, when vacation times runs around, the police will have warnings. Know where your kids are. Ensure your kids understand how to be safe, right?
Yeah.
Don't take things for granted. But I think, and there are times when I forget things, so forgive me, but I think this is the first time where specifically this end of term situation, and maybe we've spoken about it once before.
Yeah.
And I do think there's something to be said about it, because of course now I remember 10 years ago when it was just 2 of the prestige schools in Port of Spain going to Tobago after exams, and then that turned into a whole thing with party promotions and events and drinking.
Yeah.
Lots of it. And hopefully some parents, they go up there to Tobago with their kids, and all of them have some kind of supervision. But at some point, right, and part of it too is, yes, in most cases, even if things get a little out of hand, their peers will look out for them. Their parents will always be not too far away. But there is some amount of, well, I need to give them space to enjoy life or whatever. And sometimes when you give them too much space, because again, they just spent, primary school, it was lead up to SCA. And then, of course, you're into Form 1. And then at some point, because you're still young, so you ain't doing another at 11, 12 years old. But when you get to 14, 15, that's prime time for CSEC or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So how much are you potentially, if you're going to potentially letting them do, right?
Right, so parents have to be responsible.
And when you give them space now.
As I said, and as I said, it's a twofold issue. You have the stress and you have the stress relievers.
Yeah.
So parents have to be responsible in both areas. So in one case, you have to reassure, you have to motivate, you have to strategize, you have to bring in elements that you could use to overcome the issues if it is negative for the exams. And
I think you're pointing to the stress from the phenomenon that, at least in some households, for some children, if they fail at this exam and get a bad result, their life is over. Over. Back in the day, in the 90s, it would be a benign statement to say, my parents would kill me, quote unquote, if I messed up this exam. But to some extent, ironically now, while it would be a bit more serious to make a statement like that, all things considered, more importantly, the pressure for these exams is potentially more than ever before.
Yeah, and with the age of technology and access to resources, it seems how to say it, it's difficult to understand why it's more pressure and why kids are involved or have more pressure
I can tell you why. Because in the States, and even in TNT, what happens now when you have a bachelor's? Well, what originally in TNT, what would have been O-levels, now you need a bachelor's for.
Okay.
So the competition now to compete for jobs is harsher, because in the States, there's a lot of young people now, and also the economy situation where you can't afford a house, whether I think in TNT or in the States, like how your parents could have afforded a house on a similar salary, right? But that competition for jobs, for work, right, just in general, you feel it more and more, because more people are like, well, not just education, but in TNT also, it's the same channels of education, because we haven't necessarily done enough for the alternative tracks, unlike Europe.
And it's sad that parents may not recognize that the trades have potentially more income earning potential than,
because
than having a degree or a master's.
Yeah, I have a business degree, he has a business degree, that guy has a business degree, that girl, her sister and her cousin have business degrees. It's like, how many jobs are there going to be for business degrees?
Almost every officer I work with have degrees, masters.
There we go,
And they're working as a police officer.
Yeah,
in a very respected field. And it's actually difficult to find a police officer now who just have 5 CXC passes.
Right.
It's just an interim.
Yeah, because when I saw some of the applicants back last year, January, you know, these did not look like just scruffy young men that with nothing better to do. These look like young men that had a pretty good head on their shoulders and were pretty well educated.
I've worked with officers in Special Victims Department who've written books. And they teach at the academy and whatnot. And and so it's not all about the academic qualifications. I think parents need to venture into that realm of trades, and I pay tradesmen, and I think I pay them too much money. So
well, part of it is because I would argue there's not enough of them, and there's no new young
ones.
Enough
of them.
Yeah, there's no new young ones coming up.
Yeah.
And I guess all of this feeds into parental expectations, right? Some of it could be unhealthy because, like in the States, Asians, whether East Asians or South Asians, so Orientals or Indians, right?
Yeah.
They do well academically, but it's about that traditional conservative household where they're going to almost beat it in you, right? And in some cases, they do beat it in you.
You have to be a doctor.
So you're right. Yeah, and you have to be some high-end profession.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Indian comedians, but one in particular, Akash, who basically, that's his whole bit, where he could identify someone's demographics from India, you know, their background or whatever, based on their job. Like certain Indians do this, certain Indians do that, and so on and so on, right? But a lot of it comes down to the family expectations. Same thing for East Asian households of having to excel. And you see, look, in South Korea, they have issues with societal pressure for excellence that breaks people's downs. We don't necessarily have it quite that bad here.
Yeah, I think South Korea is at a different level.
Yeah, but what we do have with you see, they have a conservative traditional culture that keeps certain behaviors in check.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We have freeness and free up. Well, I mean, and the problem is, we kind of, as a society, not the police, not the government, but as a society, we basically condone underage drinking in TNT.
Yeah.
Right? So once you're 16, you now finish your first heavy exams in secondary school, and you're getting a taste of freedom, you're going to party in Tobago, and all of a sudden you don't have no adults around. What could go wrong?
Right, and under the Children's Act, it is illegal to administer a drug to a minor. The question is...
you said they are arranging purposefully parties. This is not one kid find a thing or finds a way to access a thing and introduce it to other kids. This is adults saying, we're going to organize an event to sell to all these kids.
Yes. So that's happening. Yeah, there's a thing now.
That's a thing.
And it's psychological, psychedelic drugs.
And it's not weed, right?
No.
Because, I mean, back in my day, I knew a lot of my classmates were, well, I don't know which ones exactly. I just know when I went to a study session, I thought it was a study session. I didn't realize it was a weed smoking session.
Okay.
With only a couple of us there to study, right? And then I was like, well, I'm not going to this again. But, but we ain't talking about that.
Right. No, we're not talking about that. No, and then you have the underage drinking and whatnot.
Yeah. And then, of course, at some point, some of these ages are also when they start driving.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I remember there was a show, right? So this is, of course, fictional, but one of the plot lines in the show were the parents basically telling their daughter, who was in an accident because it was a teenage driver, that she broke their rule of never being in a car with a teenage driver. And I was like, oh, that's a hell of a thing to have.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if, to some extent now, you know, again, we're accustomed back in the day, you know, nothing bad happened, so this is how we've always done it. But I feel as though now that how our young people are raised and developed in the community and the values and giving them enough wisdom to be responsible is slowly being lost by the demands of 2025 and the fast-paced life, and who don't have time to deal with whatever, and they're kind of leaving their children to be raised by devices.
And that's the most important point there, is that parents, besides being responsible, needs to take more active roles in the lives of their children to ensure that they don't go down that road. I know parents don't actually send their children to school, they homeschool them.
Right.
Just so that they won't get involved in certain activities in school.
Right.
They don't want them exposed to certain
Yes, there are certain.
They actually.
I've met a few. Yeah.
I know parents. I have spoken to parents who actually have already arranged, not marriages, but how their lives would be unfold.
That's
it's a totally different thing. But
what I mean to say, like, that potential is part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
When you have your child's life mapped out, at some point, they might want to rebel.
Yeah, and I think, but no, and
but you're thinking the flip side is not that they're going to force them down a path, but they're going to put things in place
for that, and I've actually seen it work out.
Right.
In their favor.
Yeah, I mean, once there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, right? Once you're not forcing a child down hard directions that they don't want to do, but you are guiding them to responsible decisions, then. And I guess that's the distinction you're trying to make. You could get to the same point, but one is trying to guide them there and understanding that, look, maybe your child ultimately doesn't want to go there, and the other one is forcing them down a hole. And I'll never forget, there was one student a couple of years older than me in secondary school who was very successful. Ridiculously successful academically. But then there were concerns or rumors about, well, now that he was away from family, away from the school that he grew up in, right? The community that he grew up in, the family that raised him, and he was out in the world, what happened? Now, I don't know what happened. I just know that there was enough to know that there was a legitimate question of what happened, because again, once they get that taste of freedom, it's like it's one thing about psychedelics and weed and hard drugs, but the hardest drug of all is that little taste of freedom when you never had it before, and you don't know how to control yourself and how to judge a good situation from bad because you never had to.
And I don't think parenting ends at 16 or 18 and whatnot. I think it's a lifelong journey, and at some point you have to give them their space and their freedom and whatnot. But it should be. But the guidance, as you say, is necessary.
I think that's the other problem. No one has a textbook on how to parent, but it got harder, and we got less committed. And those two things together, they don't necessarily work out. All right, we'll continue the conversation, but we have to come out on the line, so we'll take a call. Good morning, caller, you're on air.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to ASP Arun.
Morning.
Good day.
ASP are going to put you on a sticky wicket this morning.
Oh, Lord.
No. We have to prepare for the Lord, and anytime we are prepared for him and call him and he appear, then we could be in trouble. Okay, I shoot in first. This is a literal shooting. I ain't get my fuel yet. And I want to reflect on the leadership of the police. And I am going to use the word of espionage. All. Most of them have to go if we have to fix it. And listen to me. Over the weekend...
Who is them?
The leadership of the police service, the executive, most of them have to go. All.
Because Arun was thinking, you're talking about
No. I have a suggestion for Arun.
Okay.
To make it to the way to the top. Listen to me why I'm saying that. The CEO of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, said in 6 months' time she wants tangible reduction in criminal activity. You have 2 days ago, the TTPS, one of the senior officers, saying he and the executive and the TTPS will increase the detection rate by another 5%. It is 8%. You move it at 5%. I 13%. I could add. That is an insult to me, and that is an insult to the new CEO. She has set a mandate. She had given you all some parameters to work with, and here you coming back to me and tell me that is what you're doing. And why I'm taking that, with my little experience in management, a new CEO coming in, and he brought everybody together, and he said this is what he wants. And then a week after, you say, what are the progress? And you insulting me with saying 5%. You're not only insulting the executive CEO, but you're insulting the basically the citizen. And this is why I'm saying, once bitten, twice shy. Yeah. And I'm going back to the day of policing, where those senior officers at that point in time were part of that. Their policing, they have gone to the executive. Prior to that, you know what happened? They abandoned the Attorney General, they abandoned the Prime Minister, security detail. And here you have again, as I say, once bitten, twice shy. Here you have again, you're confronting most of those people who giving you that pathetic response of only 5%. I mean to say, any functional lower-level manager, if your CEO gives you a mandate, you have to try to come up with strategies and suggestions to make it work. So what the TTPS leadership is telling me, they're not in sync with what and where the CEO, the Prime Minister wants to go. So that is why I'm saying all. There are a lot of bright people, just like Arun and a number of them have identified in your program, the sergeant and beyond the tape on Wednesday legal matters, who could fill that, because you see the demeanor, you understand, you're comfortable with them, as opposed to the current leadership. I'm saying no more. God, have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. My only thing to that is, now, was it 5% in 6 months or something?
No, I don't think so. I think when you look at the operational plan of the commissioner, well, Mr. Benjamin recently came out with his operational plan.
Sorry, it's 5% in public trust and confidence. He's not talking detection rates.
No, I think it was 20% for the detection rate.
20% for detection rate, 5% public. The thing is, I hate to say this, but I think we need to understand, this is very subjective. Right? Like already, with regards to increasing measurables for police performance, that's difficult to increase it by a significant amount in the short term. So having more realistic expectations is better, right? You don't want to promise the moon. Look how well that turned out for the last commissioner. Yeah. But with regards to public trust and confidence, I hate to say this, but this is not something anybody could guarantee. Or we can increase public trust and confidence by more than 5%. How do you guarantee that, right? And it doesn't help when people are asking, why are there no body cameras out there? Just say it. But if it's 20% detection rate, like, you have to be reasonable. You can't just, I understand a CEO is going to have a mandate. And I'll just say this. You think there's never been a CEO that has not had unrealistic expectations? Just because a CEO says it doesn't make it automatically practical, doable, feasible, right? And again, when the Minister of Homeland Security is basically saying, oh, we're the one ministry that we're going to say up front, we're going to operate under budget constraints for critical equipment, then I can't really fault the commissioner for having practical goals to follow and not just promise us the moon off the bat. Yeah, well, I mean, the commissioner is most likely trying to be realistic in terms of what he could accomplish. And he has given a 3-year period. And for his operational plan would be a 3-year period, as opposed to the Prime Minister's expectation of 6 months. So to drastically reduce the you might get some reduction, right? Yeah, you want to see it trending down in 6 months, but you're not going to get there in 6 months. Exactly. As a student of criminology, I'm just saying that 6 months is not necessarily realistic in terms of the average of terms. To solve the problem. Yeah, it sounds like 6 months is a bit of a short term as opposed to medium and long term goals. So what Mr. Benjamin would have indicated in his operational plan is he has he has a short, medium, and long-term expectation, and I believe his overall objective is 20%. But the caller indicated something about 5 and 13. I didn't understand. Because he was hoping for a 5% increase in public trust and confidence. Right, and the thing is, I mean, Trinidad, I've been realistic, Trinidad is a bit difficult to gain public trust and
and confidence.
I would
especially,
argue, have you seen the world where, like, not trusting the police in half of the Western world has become like the de facto norm now?
Yeah.
And even if we'll follow that, but we had those problems before. We didn't need to import that mentality down here.
Right, and then I think the police alone shouldn't be wearing body cams. I think all public servants should be wearing body cams, because when you look at the public trust and confidence in any entity, it's low.
Well, so for certain public servants, you could record it in different ways, but for field officers,
exactly.
Maybe even traffic wardens.
Yeah,
right?
so no, but social workers, doctors, nurses.
Yeah, that's true. Well, like doctors and nurses, you could potentially have recording in the environment.
Yeah.
But like social workers at a meeting.
Yeah, I'm not talking about
but some kind of recording device, like to say, well, the interaction we recorded.
I'm talking about the upfront interaction, not the interaction detailed and in person and that kind of thing. I'm talking about
it's also why you see in some jurisdictions one person doesn't engage speaking to a member of the public. It's at least two people.
Right, and that's why in Trinidad it's difficult to put one police officer in a vehicle, like as opposed to in other jurisdictions where you have one police officer in a police vehicle patrolling a particular area. We would love to do that in Trinidad, but even one of the previous commissioners, I think it was Mr. Gibbs, he tried to sell that to the TTPS, but it was difficult to sell to the TTPS because you're talking about you needed backup on the spot, you needed that same intervention, that witnessing intervention.
Like some jurisdictions in America, and I guess in Canada, they'll have one officer in a car.
Right.
But in others, like in New York or major cities that have crime issues, they don't do that. It's two. You have a partner, not just for backup, but also to help corroborate. This is what the perpetrator did or didn't do. This is what was or was not said.
Correct. And they also have body cams. And I don't think the issue is necessarily the wearing of the body cams in the TTPS issues, because the commissioner has given instructions for everybody, including senior officers, to wear the body cams when on the field. So I don't think the issue is wearing the body cams. I think the issue is actually the amount of body cams available. And recently they bought more, and they are talking about 5,000 to 10,000 police officers in the service. I mean, not all would be active at the same point in time, but that's a lot of body cams you're talking about. You have a lot of infrastructure you have to put in place, a lot of data you have to enter into databases and collect. You're talking about a lot. And I don't think the police services has reached that goal as yet to be able to collect all that information.
Yeah. I mean, one of the issues is I do believe the cameras that they had from before, doing a little bit of research, and this is very surface level research, right? I don't know about the actual models or whatever. But given the time frame of where some of the older cameras would have been procured, cameras from that generation, they do have issues with battery life and other technical things.
And then you have the upgrading of the system to take up the data.
And let's be real, folks. How many of us are confident that the government knows how to digitize things? It's not just a police problem. There's a TNT problem. Like, we can digitize things when we're ready, but for whatever reason, when a government looks to do it, not just our government, but anywhere, right, and want to upgrade things and move on to new technology, there's an arm and a leg and a pound and a crown. And it's not going to be cheap.
And one of the things we have to understand that I don't think we understand as a nation as yet is why exactly doesn't the public have that trust and confidence in the police service? Because you have so much, the police doing so much. You have all these, like on the 30th of May, 31st of May, there was an outreach by a number of police officers in communities trying to build that trust and confidence, trying to get the community out.
This goes
community
back.
Engagement.
It's very funny how a few tidbits from marketing courses with my business degree informs me on things with regards to media, social media, and feedback.
Right.
The problem is, most people that have an average or above average interaction, or even a slightly below average interaction, they're not going to say anything.
It's below average,
It's going to be the extremes that's going to say something, right?
Yeah,
but what sells in press and what goes viral? The extreme bad interactions, right? The slapping the cell phone out of the hands, the phone call that went awry, right? The very good interactions, at times people will appreciate it and speak out about it, but it won't disseminate as far. So it's one of those things where, and look, You can't necessarily fault the police for not being good at PR, because politicians whose whole job it is to win popularity contests are bad, in this country at least, at public relations, right?
Listen, I remember in
yeah,
you're correct, because in 2011, I think, either 2011 or 2012, my memory doesn't serve me well. I remember my team and I in the Konopia district, we got 700 rounds in a house, of our location. 700
right, yeah,
9mm
that's
ammunition.
a lot back then.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a lot back then.
We also got, I think it was 3 or 6 kilos of marijuana. We were able to make an arrest. And that same year, I think we got 3 kilos of cocaine in a car. We were able to solve a number of break-ins. I'm talking about the Konopia district, Shogunas district, when I was working in the CID. And you never saw, well, I never mixed with the media. So the stories never really went out there. Because sure you never heard about it.
You see, part of the problem is this. When you make the arrest, then it goes to trial, right?
Yeah.
And basically, a lot of that stuff is kept from the media. Because I understand you want to protect legally. You don't want to do anything that will cause the trial to go awry. I get that.
Correct.
But to some extent, there should be ways to expose the public to things while still protecting the investigation and the ongoing court proceeds, right? Which is why I'm not saying that the body cam footage always needs to be revealed to the public, but there have been high-profile situations where you can, and at the very least, it comes out in public record in the trial, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to reveal before the trial.
Yeah.
But the point is, there are things that can potentially be said. There are updates that can potentially be given. But the default here is, and it's not just the police or the criminal justice system or even the public service, it's also the private sector. Say as little as possible, because we don't know how to speak to the public. That is generally how it goes, right?
Yeah.
We educate people in public relations and then ignore them,
Yeah.
right? Because we rather assume we know better than them and fail on our own merits than at least try and see, hey, maybe these people are, because for whatever reason, PR people in TNT, I know that abroad it's seen as a nonsense degree, but for whatever reason, I find some of our best and brightest go into that field, into that education track. I was amazed by some of the young people that I was in class with, right?
Yeah.
And I would hazard, I guess, they know what they're talking about. But that's part of the problem. The failures come up, not because the police reveal the failures, but because other stakeholders reveal the failures.
Right.
But the successes, and then the failures now become part of public record. Why? Because there's no court matter.
Right.
Right? Or the lack of an arrest is not protected by a court matter and sub judice and all of that.
Right.
But the successes, unfortunately, the way how the system is crafted and practiced and operated, it's going to be kept within the confines, and we're not going to hear about it. So we don't hear about the wins. And I would argue, look, part of crime fighting, Guy Griffith showed it. It's not just about practically getting the crooks. It's about the perception that we can get you, so you will think twice about breaking into that house or that car.
Exactly, yeah. I remember even there was a year, I think we had a gentleman with 36 kilos of marijuana in his vehicle. And that we never intermingled with the media, so we never, we never published all this information. I mean, I'm talking about it now.
And that's when marijuana was actually like illegal. It's not like now when it's kind of semi.
Yeah, we're talking about 2010, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, we have a caller from St. Augustine. We'll take the call. Good morning, caller. You on air?
Yeah, good morning, boss.
Morning.
Yeah, calling specifically to ask the officer a question there. Well, I see like they're taking my callers yet.
No. There's a delay caller, so please don't talk to us through the TV, just through the phone.
All right, yeah. Well, officer, they are calling concerning. It had a how I must put it. It had a fire. A fella threatened a fella and said that you kill him and burn down his house.
Right.
Right. So he did what he said he was doing. He burned down the house. That's about a month now. And I can't understand how the, I don't know which way it does go, but I can't understand how the police interviewed this fellow who threatened him and did what he's supposed to do. Did what he did. I don't understand that. Up to now, the police say, they say they can't go and bring him in to question him. I don't understand how the law does go.
So okay, so you have a victim indicating that he was threatened by an individual that his house would be burned down.
Yeah.
And it was done.
It was burned down.
Right, but
the house was burned down the same night he threatened it, the same night.
Right, so that's there. So that's and the victim could identify the person who made the threat.
Allegation, yeah. Who did it and make the allegation? Who made the allegation and did it? Yes.
Now whether and we don't know if there is evidence that he actually did it.
Well.
Beside the threat.
Beside the threat.
Yeah. Because you have two cases here. You have a case of threats to burn down somebody's house, and you have arson.
Well, I guess the question is, wouldn't the threat make that individual a person of interest in the actual arson case?
So what the threat does, it gives the police officer a reasonable cause to believe that John Doe committed the act.
Right.
And interview John Doe for allegedly committing the act. However,
so he should potentially at least
right. So what the police has to be careful, because members of the public think that the police could just go and arrest people based on mere allegations. They can interview people based on mere allegations. They can go and question anybody based on mere allegation. But would you, being an investigator, would you strategize in strategizing how you're going to interview the suspect? What evidence you're going to put to him that he did the act? So yeah, we know you threatened John Doe. I'm sorry, we know John Doe threatened the victim. But when you go to John Doe and you say, well, listen, we have information that you threatened Mr. So-and-so, and that you would burn down his house, he would most likely would just merely say, no, I didn't do that, right? He would take a denial approach. He may not answer the question. He's entitled to remain silent, of course. And he may not even answer the question. And at the end of the day, the police could only put the information to him.
So
the question is if there's evidence to suspect the person. So you might have information. You have information, but is there evidence?
So they can't.
They could interview him. They may not have enough time to arrest him.
I think the point that Spirit is making is, if they don't have evidence, they can't arrest, right? So at what point is interviewing him before they get any evidence not really useful? Because it might be more effective to wait until they have something that they could rattle him with, as opposed to they just interview him, he denies it, and then what? And now he knows that he's a person of interest for sure.
And one of the things you would look at, one of the first things an investigator would do is they would depend heavily on the fire report to indicate what caused the fire. So if gasoline caused the fire, then one of the things the investigator could do is...
And now that you say that, boss, thanks for saying that. Thanks for saying that. When I went by the fire station, well, you get different things for letters to go to people and things.
Yeah.
The fire officer tell me, I asked him, if they find out the cause of the fire? They tell me they can't give me that. I had to file a freedom of information after getting that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the investigator
that's part of the investigation.
The investigator is entitled to the information. He would have to apply to the chief fire officer to get the information. Some of the evidence, if they collect evidence on the scene, would have to go to forensics, because the fire officers may not be qualified to give that information. But what I think the investigators could do, for instance, if gasoline was used,
they could investigate
and there's a far-stretching thing to do is take out a search warrant to go and look for gasoline, if you understand. So would the suspect have gasoline home? What is wrong with having gasoline home?
No, but let's just say if they find something unique enough in how the fire was started that could tie back to the suspect, then that's something that's actionable. Right? Yeah. But with regards to the fire service, technically speaking, no, they can't just reveal details of an investigation to anybody.
Even if you make a report, to the police.
They can't reveal it to the victim?
No. So even if you make a report to the police, because everything is subjected to the court, that the police collect and the fire service collect and whatnot. So you have to go through the Freedom of Information Act to get the information. So even if you make a report to the police, You have to apply to the under the Freedom of Information to get a copy of the report.
Not just that, but if there's an ongoing investigation and you tell the victim what you know and you give him all the details and then he reveals that to the public, it could scare away the perpetrator. It could potentially compromise the investigation further. It could compromise the court matter.
Yeah.
Like you just can't do that. I understand. Yes, if this is the case where someone vandalized your wall, spray paint your house, you know, egg your car, you know, then maybe the officer will reveal that to you. But if it's like a major crime like murder, arson, you know, serious destruction of property, right? Firebomb in a car, whatever. That's that different level.
But what you could do, Chief, so you know the victim personally?
If I know the what?
The victim of the fire.
Yeah.
One of the things he can do is apply under the criminal, we get compensation under the Criminal Compensation Act, where he could get, he could apply for compensation from the state for, compensation from the state for being a victim of a crime. And I think arson is one of them. So you have murder, you have arson, and there are a number of sexual offenses.
I didn't even know that this was a thing.
Yeah, so he could apply to get a grant or some compensation from the government. Yeah? So he would need those documents and he could apply through the Freedom of Information Act to get it. Not all documents you would be allowed to get. Like if you, like a medical is subjected to the court. It's our evidence for the court. So
Right.
So it's up to the legal department to say, well, yes, we'll give you this and we'll give you that and whatnot. Yeah. So he could also apply under the, and if he requires counseling, of course, the officers involved in the investigation would hand over the counseling part to the victim and witness support unit. Yeah? So,
yeah, thank you, Paula.
but as again, the crime you described, there's a difference between the information and the evidence to act on. So,
and also, we don't know how far the investigation is along. If it's still new, if it's not. If it's like 8 years old, that's different, right? Like then your complaints will have a lot more relevance because it's taking too long.
Yeah.
Right? But if it's like within the last couple of months, because it's not always automatic that you're gonna just find evidence as a smoking gun and solve the case.
When you pull in the suspect, you're gonna ask him if
even on television, some storylines they just can't find evidence.
But they have enough. Once the victim gives a statement indicating that he was threatened.
Yes, he could still be charged on that.
He could get charged for the threats.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
We have Sansan on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good morning. Yes, Pierre.
Good day, sir.
Well, you understand the issue with public trust and confidence from that previous caller. You see his demeanor when he first called what he said?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, he's expecting a lot.
Right.
But
so
we don't. Yeah, and I tried to explain as best as I could, but I don't know if he understands the difference between the information and the evidence. Yeah.
I think to some extent, too, the investigating officers that's engaging with victims need to explain these things. And just because you explain doesn't always mean that they accept it, right?
Yeah.
To be fair. But the flip side is, I don't know if they always give the public explanations for how things are done.
Yeah, and if the guy has the evidence that he was threatened, they should charge him for the threats. Yeah.
Well, let me a couple of things I wanted to get through. Well, you said something at the beginning of your introduction into the program, SPRO, and that issue with the psychedelics and the persons having parties with those minors.
Yeah.
And I'm interested after my comment if you could expand in terms of has the police actually held anybody for this, or are you still investigating? Right? So that you can answer that after. What I wanted to get at is you all were talking about these school going to be out just now and the youths. One of the issues I'm seeing in the youth population of Trinidad and Tobago, and it's somewhat being perpetrated by the state. I look at the examinations, and I believe that examinations, the CXC examinations in particular, well, what they call it, CSEC.
Yeah.
It seems as if the standards are being lowered.
Yeah.
In the exams.
In those examinations. And it bothers me that we are actually creating a de facto mediocre society by doing this. Because you have, if you are lowering the standard, then what you expect to get out of it in the end. And this is, and I'm seeing this as well within, you'll talk about the trades, and try to get tradesmen. Even those tradesmen that you're getting now, a lot of them aren't as good as the tradesmen of yesteryear. They give you shoddy work. I am actively seeing this.
Yeah.
And because of my extensive knowledge within the trades as well, when people come to do things for me that I can do for myself, by the way, I have to sometimes tell them no, because they come and tell you this is what I'm going to do, and I have to sometimes say no, you're not going to do that. This is what I want you to do, and sometimes show them. I am amazed that the proficiency, tradesmen proficiency in Trinidad and Tobago. You have the very good ones, and then everybody else, they're below the bar. And this is, and we are doing this within the society, and something is going to, because if you do that, you're going to get mediocre people working in organizations, in the state organizations, and everywhere. And I'll segue that into the fact that over the weekend, they had prisoners examinations, entrance examinations for prisoners. And I can tell you the questions that were being asked on the paper. It was amazing to see what filled the gap for a prison exam. I am appalled at the level of questioning that those are Form 2 and Form 3 questions. That should have no place in an exam, an entrance exam to go into the prison service.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is what we are creating in Trinidad and Tobago. Sorry to say, it is ridiculous. And what we are creating. And one of the other things that I recognize within the examination, with a lot of these students there, a lot of them have very little, what do you call it, Sean? Very little public, or what we would, what they should call it civics, and then they call it social studies. A lot of them are not proficient in understanding what's happening within the country, what's happening within the Caribbean. In an age where information is so readily available in any time in history, that is what we're putting out in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a golden opportunity right now in Trinidad and Tobago with the youth to become. We have a lot of these institutions. We have a lot of institutions to educate them. Somehow, the system. That person, I don't know, that man named system, that's failing the youth in this country, and it are struggling in trying to understand how to fix it, because it has so many different levels and aspects in it to try and fix to get it to a better place. But there's an opportunity here to create better citizens and a better country.
Yeah.
And I really. It's a really good conversation you had this morning with respect to that, in terms of the examination and how and school being out and how we deal with the youth. But we are failing the youth in the country.
Yeah. And
don't forget me with that question on that psychedelic.
Of course, yeah. Well, right, with the psychedelic drugs, when we got the information, I was.
Thanks, caller.
Yeah, I wasn't working on special victims at the time. And we got information, so there was invites going out to children. So what the guy was using was social media, and
because this happens all the time, right? There's parties,
right?
Party promoters have it,
right? So we handed
in some
over,
cases, and a lot of cases, there's alcohol, but this is a step beyond.
We handed over the information to the relevant department, and I believe the party didn't happen. So
the organizer went to the wind.
Yeah. So it was an informal party,
right?
But meaning that it wasn't open to members of the public and whatnot.
Right.
But it was invite via social media and whatnot.
And a lot of people, you go to a party, you don't actually know the names of the you might know the company that's promoting it, or one name. You don't necessarily know.
But he was promoting it. He or they were promoting it as a psychedelic drug party.
Oh, so they said that up front. Oh gosh. All right. So I guess that means potentially no arrests were made in that situation.
No, not
because it didn't happen.
Yeah, none that I know.
Right.
Because the department I sent it to would have or should have involved the Organized Crime and Narcotics Bureau. I don't know if they did, but the outcome was that the party wasn't...
Well, so, ironically, if the party didn't actually happen, do you really have anything you could arrest them on?
Yeah, you could take out that search warrant and go and look for the psychedelic because you have information that...
Right, that he had it. Okay, yeah. But with regards to the actual minors' involvement, that technically didn't happen,
that didn't
right?
come to fruition.
Okay, so at least in this case, you could argue to some extent at least, it kind of worked. The threat of a police investigation caused them to close up shop.
Yeah, because I think we spoke about this before, I think this was last year, I can't remember. This is why, this is not the first time I mentioned it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, with regards to the second part, Mr. Sanfernando, I'll say this. We appreciate your appreciation for the topic, but you did actually take it maybe down into, or expanded it in a way that I actually appreciate. So I'll just say this. There's a story in the States where a high school graduate is suing her school system, her school board or whatever. Yeah. She graduated with honors and she's illiterate. She can't read.
Okay.
Right? She's going to college. She graduated high school with honors. She can't read.
And she didn't take it and run. She decided to...
Well,
sue
because how is she going to continue in college if she can't read? So she's going to sue, right? Because to be fair, if you tell me I graduate with honors, at the very least, at a high school level, I think I could read and write.
Well, you have a lot of online degree programs and whatnot, and then you have, the caller spoke about the quality of the education, and then he spoke about the prison service, how they take in the intake.
Questions.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. And I'll try and be brief. There is a philosophy that systemic inequalities makes education merit-based systems, discriminatory. So they try to even the playing field by making the system easier. That's one thing. I also know when I was in secondary school, there was talk about Cambridge making exams easier in England for English students. But I don't know what the motivation behind that was or how true that was, right? But that's like 20 years plus ago. But with regards to current modern day politics, because in the States, ironically, it's not the white people that's getting ahead. It's East Indians, East Asians, and South Asians. So East Indians and Oriental, right? And then Jewish, and then maybe white people, and then you have a whole set of other minorities. But notice the people at the top are also minorities, and that's kind of ignored when they talk about racism and discrimination, right? Yeah. The problem is you're saying, oh, well, these disadvantaged people, we need to set the bar lower so that they can meet their potential. The problem is when you, at some point, you're going to set the bar so low, they're not prepared for whatever the next level is. Yeah. Right? And you end up potentially with a student that can't read, graduate with honors and go into college.
And the thing we spoke about with the trade, I honestly believe there's not enough people in the trade service. I remember last week I called my electrician. Because he did a lot of work for me. And I remember giving him some work to do. And he fell off the map. And I was so concerned. I called him and I was like, how is everything? Are you alive? Are you okay? And he was like, I don't remember making arrangements to do any work for you. And I was like, yeah, we made the arrangements. He was supposed to come and do some work for me. Yeah. I couldn't get a hold of him. He said he couldn't remember, and I think he was so busy, he was so tied up with all his work. Yeah, and he's really good.
Look, here's a different example in a similar vein. When you need to fix your car, how many people actually could fix the car, and how many people, all they do now is replace parts? Yeah. Right? So, to some extent, it's similar to when we got calculators. Ironically, in certain parts of the world, they're training the kids to do complex math in the brain, right? Not with a calculator. But as the digital revolution has come on more and more, the individual capacity to do work is being reduced. Right now, for AI tools, one professor said detection software isn't really that good, and they're flagging people who did not use AI to plagiarize, right? So it reached a point now where, in her opinion, they should just accept that students are going to use it and adjust accordingly. And the problem with that is when you're automating more and more of your work, you're losing skills and we're dumbing things down.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the quality of the work would be poor. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot more to that, and to what extent are all of these things affecting us in various ways, directly and indirectly, can't say. But we could fall into those traps too if we're not careful. If we try to balance the system artificially, and then the problem is the results that come out at the end are going to be less than good enough. Because once you get onto the workplace, all of this whole things are trying to be fair and end systemic discrimination, all of that, that's going out the window, because right now in 2025, business owners want people that could work, right? Look at all them sports owners for the most part. They realize who the best athletes in what sports came from what demographic. Now I'm just saying, right? Performance at the end of the day, that's where the private sector boils down to 99% of the time. I don't think we really do that here in TNT, but I'll save that soliloquy for another time. Thanks to ASP Arun for joining me once again. Thanks to the callers and to the commentators earlier on in the show. This is Talking About WESN, just reminding you to stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Have a good day, folks, and never forget that it's nice to be nice, especially on the road, because who knows, maybe it was a road rage incident that caused some of these accidents. We don't know. Be our brother and sister's keeper so we could see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.